we've talked to an awful lot of people. It seems strange today. I'm talking without a mask on because we're far apart from each other. But we've talked to people outside of grocery stores or at historic sites in Vermont and others. And I hear, one, the concern, of course, what's happening, but the pride in Vermont in responding to COVID so much better than the national scale has. But concerns, where do we go next? The hospitality industry and so many others have been hurt. How do our kids go back to school and so on? And I think of what the Vermont Council on Rural Development has done. You have engaged our communities, local, state, federal agencies, nonprofits, and others. And as I told Paul the other day when I talked with him, you're a rock and telling us what might happen. And I look at the team, Paul, John, yourself, Margaret, Gibson, McCoy, Jenna Koloski, Nick Kramer. This is great. You had 100 community visits, I think, Paul, you said, throughout Vermont, in many corners of the state. I think that's extremely important because we Vermonters are naturally concerned. What's going to happen? Are we going to get our jobs back? Our kids go to school? Are we safe? And these kind of visits can help. I remember last year I spoke to about 500 community leaders who had gathered for your community leadership summit. And I said that VCRD finds that when local leaders unify teams for collective action, we see activation of the very foundation of progress and democracy for their towns, for Vermont, and really for our country. Now, I said that last year before the COVID-19 pandemic. It's even more important today. It's what you need. I've been working every day with my staff in the Senate Appropriations Committee with John Tracy, who leads my Vermont office here, and others, and trying to figure out what we do, what kind of legislation. If the majority leader will let the legislation come forward, I guarantee you there will be a strong component for rural America, especially our state. What I've learned from all of you tells me the things that are needed. So what I want to tell you, we're going to hear success stories. Noel Williams, Lisa Sullivan, Charlie Hancock, and others. I need these stories, I would tell you, because I use them when I go back to Washington or on the conference calls I have every day with other senators. I tell those stories. You know, there are the 6 most important words in a speech are, let me tell you a story. And we have senators who hear a lot from the huge urban areas, areas that are many, many times the population of Vermont. They've heard the stories of small town Vermont and the stories I've heard from you. And we'll keep doing it. And that's, I want to hear from you, so I'm gonna hush up, but don't stop. Don't stop the meetings you're having around the state. And don't hesitate to pass on to me things you think are going right in whatever legislation we have, but also things that go wrong. I want to hear from you. Again, Marcel and I have been all over the state, usually wearing a mask, talking to people in parking lots. Every so often somebody will come up. I did have somebody obviously from out of state, and they looked at our car and they said, how come you got license plate 1? I said, well, we're a pretty small state. We don't have many cars. But most people were happy to tell us what their stories were, what they need. And Paul, John, the rest, I cannot tell you how, I mean, we were heartbroken hearing the losses, but we were heartened by hearing the courage and the optimism. So with that, I'll hush up, but thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you so much, Senator Leahy. We really appreciate you joining us this morning. You know, as we reflect on what leadership is, I just think about, I don't remember how many votes it is you've taken in the U.S. Senate, but it's some astronomical number. And each one of those votes is a decision you've had to use your judgment and your leadership on behalf of Vermonters. And it's really just a powerful record of leadership. And what a model for all of us, the leadership you've shown for Vermont and for our country. So thank you so much for being with us. So as we think about the Vermont Community Leadership Network that we're launching today, to me, and I think to all of us, a lot of what we think about is the many different shapes and sizes leadership takes in Vermont. It goes from those folks who are elected to lead, whether that's a select board chair or a member of the legislature, but it also is those informal leaders who just step forward to maybe they're chairing a task force, or maybe they're just doing something in their neighborhood. You know, my neighbor who organizes the exercise class out in the park every day since we started into the pandemic. All of those are different shapes of leadership. And what we at VCRD have sort of come to the conclusion is that there is a real power in bringing all of those different leaders from all corners of Vermont together. And that's what's really informing our thinking as we launch the Vermont Community Leadership Network, is the power of bringing you all together. I mean, look at this mix of Vermonters. If you scan through this set of screens, an amazing list of Vermonters from all over, all leading on different projects in their communities. And what we see is tremendous potential in bringing you all together. You know, some of our thinking around this, Senator mentioned the Vermont Community Leadership Summits we've hosted in 2018 and 2019. Some of you were probably there, whether that was down at Castleton or in Randolph at Vermont Technical College. When we launched that first summit, we had to build a waiting list because of the demand for that summit. People were just so interested in the topic and eager to come together. We see it also with our community visits, the importance of those Vermonters who come together, lead task forces, and that those leaders who come forward, their effectiveness is such an important determinant in sort of how a community progresses together. So that's why we are launching this Vermont Community Leadership Network. I'm going to quickly share a screen because what we're doing today is we're announcing sort of an opening series of workshops that are going to happen this fall. When we talk about this network, we're going to start with an opening series of online workshops that will kick off in September, and we're encouraging folks today to sign up for those, to sign up for the network, and to sign up for those workshops. So let me just share a. Hang on one second here. So I hope folks can see that there. So we've got a new webpage for the Vermont Community Leadership Network. And today we're announcing the fall series of workshops that we are bringing together. September 15th, we're going to launch things with a workshop about hosting and facilitating effective meetings in a time of COVID. You know, we're at a moment where we're engaging online in a way that we never have before, and we're all learning new skills for how do we do that effectively? How do you run a meeting when you're looking at people on a screen instead of in a room together? So that's we'll open with that. And the way that we're going to structure this, we'll have workshops every other Tuesday from 10 to 11:30 in the morning, and we will alternate between what we're calling skills workshops, where we're helping leaders sort of build those universal skills of community leadership, whether that's facilitation, communications, those other skills. And then on the alternating Tuesdays, we will host workshops around particular project types. And so on September 29th, we'll be talking about childcare and after-school programs. Then on October 13th, we'll be talking about addressing equity and inclusion. October 27th, about building and supporting local food solutions. And finally, on November 10th, around developing skills for growing participation through effective outreach. As you can see, we've got right here on this page a sign-up link for folks to sign up for the network. My plea to you all is please spread the word. Like the more participation we have in the network, the stronger it is. The greater mix of Vermonters we have participating, the stronger our network is. So please take the time. It's a really simple form to fill out, but it would be great to have you share that around. We're really trying to build membership in the network. And then finally, I just want to mention that eventually, as we do this work, we are going to we will build some action centers, some teams of folks that are working on particular projects and really want to learn from each other together. Cohorts of people, let's say you're working on building a trail in your community, and you could connect with other Vermonters who are working on building trails in their community. Think about the power of coming together as a group, learning from each other, connecting with resource providers, and really building sort of a team effort around trail building in communities. So that will come later as we get going with the network. Finally, and next, I guess, what I want to do is turn it over to Jenna Koloski, because today, in addition to launching the Vermont Community Leadership Network, we are also announcing the publication of the Community Leadership Guide. And Jenna is going to talk to you about that. So Jenna, it's all yours.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. Really cool to be on this call and see everybody. It's fitting to be launching this. So I see people in Swanton and Montgomery and Burke and all these communities that we've worked with. And I've really missed being on the road and seeing all of you in person. And in a lot of ways, this guide and this work comes from all of you. And so really great to have you on this call to announce the Community Leadership Guide. This has been a project that VCRD has been working on for well over a year now. We really, in those summits that John and Paul described, in the community visits, we've heard all around the state that there really is a need for one place where community leaders can come and find what they need in terms of action suggestions, resources, technical support, financial support, tools to do the work that they need to get done in their communities. And so we decided that it really made sense to pull this resource together and develop something for you and for other community leaders around the state to draw from when they embark on a local project. So this leadership guide is really a compilation of the community work that VCRD has been doing and that all of you have been doing over the last 20 years. What we did, many of you have participated in community visits before with us. For those of you that haven't, at the end of a community visit, the results are maybe 3 to 5 local teams decide to take on projects that are important to the future of their community. Each of those teams then develop an action plan, and we work with them and a visiting team of state experts and leaders on the topic they're working on to develop also a list of resources and people they can call on, and importantly, funding sources they can draw from to support the work. So what we did is we went over the last 10 years of all those different projects, and we thought, what are the projects that are coming up again and again? What are important projects to Vermonters today? And we developed a list of those projects and then pulled together all of the action team ideas that you and community leaders developed, that visiting team members suggested, and we compiled those into a core list of starting points for community projects. And we also compiled all of the resources that are available to community leaders as you get started. And that really served as the backbone for this guide. We also identified some tools and skills that are important to community leaders as you get started with your work. And so if you look at, John has pulled up the table of contents for this guide, you'll see there's a whole list of tools for community leaders. So the guide opens with, how do we bring people together to engage them in a conversation? How do we have a lot of communities that come to us and say, we know that we've got 20 different things we could do, but we want to pick 3. And so there's some guidance around how to set priorities for action. There's some tools for dealing with differences and conflict in communities, for managing effective meetings, and also, importantly, for engaging diversity and building inclusiveness and equity in the projects that we're doing. So those tools are available. And then if you scroll down to the second section, that's all about community projects. So we built a list of, developing an ag network, boosting the creative economy, improving bike and pedestrian safety, addressing childcare needs. We looked at all the different projects that communities have been focusing on for the past 10, 20 years and built a list of starting points and resources in each of the different categories. So I encourage you to use this guide, draw from it where it's needed. If you want to read all 140 pages, that's great, but it's set up so that if you have one project to work on, you can dive right into that section of the guide and then use that to identify who you could reach out to for support. The last section of the guide is all about additional resources. Where could you go if you want to develop more skills or dive a little bit deeper in that training and developing your skills as you embark on your work? So that's all there and available to you. I just want to say, this has been a group project. The whole VCRD staff has contributed. We also had Susan Clark come in and consult with us with drafting the guide, which was incredibly valuable. And we also consulted with some other community partners. We're not the be-all, end-all experts in all of these. We had Susanna Davis, the state equity director. We had Let's Grow Kids. We had USDA Rural Development. So we really had some help in making sure this was as useful as possible. So we know that every town's unique, and this will be used in different ways, but we hope that this can be a starting point for all of you and others as we get to work in our communities.
Wonderful, thanks, Jenna. And just I'm gonna navigate, well, let's see. To remind folks that guide is now available electronically, and you can use the sign-up sheet for the network to request a printed copy of that to be mailed to you as well. So, so we're excited to get that out there. Thanks, Jenna. So at this point, as we thought about how to launch the Community Leadership Network and publish the guide and announce that to folks, we thought about how to put an event together that would do that. And what occurred to us is the strongest way to do that is actually to bring forward local leaders who are doing great work in their communities. There is nothing more powerful from hearing from others doing great things, hearing their stories of how they are doing their work and their stories of success. And so at this point, I'm actually excited to welcome Noel Ribby Williams as our first local leader from Montpelier. I live in Montpelier, and I have to say, a few years ago when our high school made the decision to raise the Black Lives Matter flag, it was a powerful and emotional moment for us as a community. Noel was very active in that and continues to be active in so many ways here in Montpelier. So with that, Noel, I'm gonna turn it over to you. So go for it. And I'm gonna share a screen. We've got some pictures that Noel wants to share as well. So thanks, Noel.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. So like John said, I'm Mary Noel Nalamle Ribby Williams, and I go to UVM and I study health science. So to me, leadership is unity and hope for a community to come together and change and make necessary changes in their society. I don't really believe I was chosen to be a leader. My leadership chose me. I'm a Black woman in Montpelier, Vermont, and I think my life in itself is activism work. And I truly believe that it's our duty as citizens to see problems in our society and work together to fix them. And that is what patriotism really is to me. And I hope that we all understand that we can all be leaders, and big and small, change is possible. Some of the leadership that I've been in is raising the Black Lives Matter flag at Montpelier High School. And after the high school did it, that's a picture of the middle school following our lead. And so it was awesome to go support them and seeing the next generation step up. I've also been involved in the most recent, in Montpelier, Black Lives Matter protest. And that was a huge turnout. About 5,000 people came to that protest, and it was wonderful for our community, not just of Montpelier, but of Vermont, to come together and make that statement. I've also been involved in writing Black Lives Matter in front of the State House, and I think that's a huge statement to our leaders of our state to walk into their building every day with that reminder of who they are here to serve, and make sure that Vermont really knows that their Black community means a lot to them as well. So yeah, that's most of my leadership experience. So yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
Noel, thank you so much for joining us. I've struggled here a little bit to bring up all the pictures. Let me just quickly, if folks will bear with me, I just want to share the screen to share those pictures with folks. So let me do that quickly here, so that I think these pictures help folks appreciate this great work. Can folks see that? Some really powerful images, and just given the news that from the last few days, we appreciate as much as ever the importance of this work. So thank you, Noel. All right, next, from all the way at the other end of the state, down in Wilmington, we have Lisa Sullivan, who is a bookstore owner and has stepped into so many other roles of leadership down there in Wilmington and statewide in response to the tremendous challenges we're facing right now with COVID-19. So Lisa, take it away.
Hi, thanks so much for having me today. It's great to talk to all of you. As John said, I live in Wilmington. I own the independent bookstore here, Bartleby's Books. I've lived in Vermont for about 20 years with my husband and 3 children. I moved to Vermont, as I said, about 20 years ago, and what I found out really quickly is that opportunities to engage in Vermont are vast. So once you say yes to that first committee, you have lots of leadership opportunities thrown your way. So I've worked mostly in economic and community development with our downtown organization, with our Chamber of Commerce, done some work statewide and some regionally. So I have a few thoughts to share today on kind of what does it mean to be a leader in Vermont, for me at least? And I'll start with a little bit of a funny story. So one common theme that I see is you have to roll up your sleeves and get the work done. So about 13 or 14 years ago, my good friend Laura Sibilia and I, who's now a state rep but was running our Chamber of Commerce here at the time, were launching the first annual Wine and Harvest Festival. And it was a ton of work. It was a much larger event than this area had put on, and 2 days before the event, it rained and rained and rained, and this event was taking place in a field. And so someone had the bright idea that we would go and get 200 bales of hay, and we would spread the hay out everywhere. So we get to the place, and I look at these bales of hay, and I am not a Vermont girl. This is 13 or 14 years ago, and I didn't have a lot of practice. And I looked at my hands, and I looked at the hay, and I said to Laura, you may not know this about me, but I'm a little bit of a princess, which of course has become a long-standing joke between us. And she handed me a pair of gloves, and we loaded up the trailer with the hay. And so what that became was years basically of me lugging statues of public art projects around and cases of drinks, and also writing press releases and cajoling people into helping us. But really what I took away is, if you want to make a contribution, you really have to be willing to do the work and hopefully have some fun doing it. And the other thing that I have really noticed is that here in Vermont, like everywhere, sometimes things are the way they are because that's the way they've always been. And so sometimes we take no for an answer too easily. We say, oh, 20 years ago, someone asked that question and we couldn't do it. And so now we're still not trying again. And I think it's really important that we push through those things. In our town of Wilmington, for many years, there was a whisper about, well, couldn't we be a designated downtown? Isn't that something that we could do? And at some point, we, you know, some powers that be were told, no, we can't, we're too small. And then Tropical Storm Irene hit, and Senator Leahy will remember because he and Governor Shumlin at the time came in via helicopter and saw that the town was had been completely flooded. There were no businesses, there were no town services, emergency services were crippled. It was a really difficult time in Wilmington. But that's really where the story started. And so what happened is people had to decide, do we want to save our downtown? Do we want to have a future for our community? And people got together and people led. And where we are now in this next crisis is in a much different place than we were right after Irene or even heading into Irene. So now we have, the town has a designated downtown. We have a strong organization that is running programs. The town has hired an economic development specialist and Gretchen Haverluck. We have run a successful business plan competition, and in the last year put 2 new businesses in our downtown through that competition. We have shop local initiatives, we have business resource workshops, and lots of events usually. So we're in a much stronger place as we go into as we're dealing with this, with the COVID crisis. And what I see when I look around in our community and throughout the state is that there are leaders everywhere in Vermont. There's not 1 or 2 leaders sprinkled around in each community. There are leaders in every small business, on the select boards, on our town committees, on our nonprofit boards, really helping to move initiatives forward. So when I think about this time, and what's really important is that if people have a skill to share, come forward with that, get engaged. And if you're people who you're on this call, you probably are, you know, reach out to someone who you think might be useful and might be helpful. Because I think that this kind of engagement can bring Vermont to just a much better place moving forward. And when someone asks you to be on that first committee, you know, try saying yes. It could lead to years of rewarding work. So thank you.
Thank
John,
you.
This is Patrick Leahy. If I could just step in just for a second.
Please.
Lisa and Noel, I just really appreciate what you said. Well, when my son-in-law was up here recently, he's a photographer, he was photographing all the Black Lives Matter signs throughout rural Vermont. He's African-American, grew up in Richmond, Virginia. So he was glad to see this in our state. And Lisa, I remember so much helicoptering in with General Doobie and the governor, seeing that devastation. And I remember coming back in there over the years, time and time again, Marcel and I will stop and we're like, I had to pull out the pictures I had of the devastation and say, look what this town has done. And you're an inspiration. And of course, this son of a printer loves being in bookstores and holding real books. So thank you. Sorry to interrupt, John, but Noel and Lisa really, and Jenna, everything they were saying just touched me a great deal. And so, Jenna, Noel, Lisa, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Senator. And we actually have one more leader. You know, I think that message to close, Lisa, about saying yes is a powerful one to use to introduce Charlie Hancock, because when you look at all that Charlie's involved in, both in Montgomery, but also with some statewide conversations as well, clearly here's somebody who has said yes more than a couple of times. And so with that, Charlie, it's all yours.
Great, thanks so much, John. It's an honor to be part of this today, especially when I look across this Hollywood squares of other amazing leaders in our state and elsewhere. As John said, my name is Charlie Hancock, and among a few other hats I wear, I'm in my 4th year serving as the chairman of the Montgomery Select Board. Like most people, I got involved because there was a change that I wanted to affect in my community. For me, that was updating our town plan to reflect greater resource protections while bringing in tools that would help foster smart growth, things we wanted to see. And after spending about 6 years on the Planning Commission, I was asked to throw my hat in the ring for an open seat on the Select Board. That ask was pivotal to me. And as Lisa touched on, as we just discussed, I think the concept of the ask is foundational to how we think about leadership in our communities. You know, leadership isn't about strengthening ourselves. It's about strengthening the whole enterprise, the community itself, however we define that community. And part of it is identifying others with that spark and fostering the leaders of tomorrow. When we think about success, we need to think about what success will look like after we're gone. And if that success isn't possible without us as the individual, then we've failed. That's the role of the leader that I see, is empowering the community to empower itself. It's about setting the table. And I've heard that characterized as leading from behind, but I think of it simply as facilitation. You know, putting the pieces in place where the community can strengthen itself around a shared set of values and goals. In my community, an example of this is when we invited VCRD to lead a community visits process for just that purpose. Only by empowering the community to envision a common future could we build the support to advance the impossible, which for us was passing a $19 million bond measure in the middle of a global pandemic, looking at the worst economic outlook in decades. A lot of folks thought we were crazy, and we probably are a little bit crazy, but it was the base of support built by the community itself around this project and not by any one individual that proved that even in the darkest times, we can find a collective light to look to. I think another equally important role I see for a leader is working and finding common ground in a world where division tends to rule the day. You know, we've been pulled to extremes that leave us so polarized, leading to the breakdown of collectivism that really sits at the foundation of community. Too often we no longer talk to each other, but past each other. And it's happening nationally, but also locally right here in Vermont. I can point to any number of communities that are wrestling, for example, with conversations around ATV use on public roads, conversations which stray from nuances around things like traffic safety and town character and towards tribalism and us versus them. You know, these things that poison even the most basic dialogues. And so as leaders, I think our role is to reset this commitment to our common purpose and to bring back this place where a disagreement doesn't necessarily mean a fight. So how can we support local leaders in this work? You know, I think one key to success is capacity, both organizational with partners across the state like VCRD, who bring the expertise to the table, but it's also financial. You know, the biggest hurdles rural communities like ours face are ones that quite simply our grand lists can't support. You know, bringing broadband to the end of every dirt road, ensuring that our village centers have the wastewater capacity to catalyze future growth, or guaranteeing that community facilities are available to support our youngest generations and our oldest generations. You know, these are the things that we need to look to. And leaders can get the community there, but it takes state and federal and private dollars to make these projects happen. And it's that movement which catalyzes greater action. You know, when a community sees success, it feels empowered, and it's almost like giving them permission to dream big again. You know, another key to success is networks, like we've been talking about today. You know, my community of Montgomery sits in a valley, but I know that on the other side of those ridgelines are other communities wrestling with the same challenges that we are. When I talk to my friends in Westford or Craftsbury and exchange ideas, you know, it creates that network of leadership that's stronger than any individual. You know, we lift ourselves up together and we provide that spark that keeps us going when our own tank feels kind of empty. So as leaders at whatever level or capacity we find ourselves, I challenge us to think less about pushing success across the finish line ourselves and more about how we can empower communities to work to push that success themselves. How we set the table for others, not to be the deciders of our future, but really as stewards of that conversation around what the future looks like and how we're going to get there together. So thank you for this opportunity, and I'm really excited to see this work launch.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Boy, you said it well with that that power of networking, and that's very much part of what informs our thinking as we launch this network. Is that that bringing of leaders and voices together is more powerful than each of us doing our work individually. Somebody has pointed out we had a little bit of a snafu with our sign-up form for the Leadership Network. It's now been fixed, so anyone who went in and tried to sign up for the network and ran into that little glitch can go back in and sign up there. And I think Nick is maybe going to share that link again for folks. And at this point, I'm actually going to turn it over back to Paul, because we are going to make a couple of special announcements as we bring this to a close. Paul.
Thanks, and I'd like to introduce the chair of the board of VCRD, Julie Moore, who's also the secretary of ANR, who will help give out the Vermont Community Leadership Awards for 2020. Julie?
Good morning, and thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here today and to be part of the announcement of two such exciting initiatives. Each year, the Vermont Council on Rural Development recognizes an individual who, as a volunteer, has had a transformative effect on their community. And this year, in addition to launching the Community Leadership Network and releasing the Community Leadership Guide, the VCRD Board of Directors chose to honor two of Vermont's most dedicated and successful town volunteers, whose project leadership not only accomplished great things, but has also brought momentum, hope, and new unity to their communities. Today, we're proud to honor the leadership of Mike Strait from Brighton and Des Hertz from Burke, who absolutely exemplify the spirit of community leadership at the foundation of the progress of Vermont communities. I'm going to turn it back over to Paul to tell us a little bit about each of our award winners.
Well, we'll start with Mike Strait, who I see right in the center of my screen right now. Mike is originally from Ohio, but made Vermont his home in 2004 and moved to Island Pond in 2010. We all know Island Pond, Brighton, is in a quiet corner of Vermont and has had some challenging economic dislocations over the years. But today, Island Pond is on a roll with a strengthened downtown, a new recreational set of opportunities, a new feeling of momentum, public spirit, and pride, and it's largely because of Mike as a catalyst for that community. He owns and operates the Heart and Health Country Store in downtown Island Pond with his husband, Tim O'Barr. He's chairman of the Brighton Select Board, the Island Pond Renewal Committee. He's treasurer of the Brighton Community Forum, a member of the Island Chamber of Commerce, former leader of that group, member of the Planning and Zoning Board, part of the Northeast Kingdom Community Broadband Project, the Northeast Kingdom Marketing Partnership, the Northeast Kingdom Community Challenge Team for the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. Mike has said yes and stepped in and has been a rock at the center of that community to help them move forward. And there's a couple other folks on the list, but I'll turn it back to Julie to actually help us present the award.
Fantastic. Yeah, Mike is such a dedicated community leader, the kind of leader, as you can see from that long list of commitments that Paul just shared, always says yes. Whether it's joining a local committee, helping organize a regional leadership summit, or speaking as at one of VCRD's statewide events. He's someone you can count on and someone that his community can always count on to step up where leadership is needed. It's leaders like this that are so critical to community and statewide success. And we are happy to recognize your leadership, Mike, with this 2020 Vermont Community Leadership Award. Congratulations.
Yeah, so I'm handing it to you. a little plaque of Vermont. It looks reversed to me, but I think you can see it. We'll put this in the mail to you, and we'd love to give you a second to share an observation.
I'd like to first thank VCRD for this great honor and for all the great work that you guys do. Your community visit 2016 laid the groundwork for everything that we've achieved at Island Pond. I also, as part of this, have to thank my husband, Tim, for supporting me in all of these various roles, because it kind of impacts him when I say yes to everybody. And right now, despite the uncertainty surrounding the current times that we're in, I see a bright future for both Island Pond and the entire Northeast Kingdom. And I'm truly excited to be part of its rebirth as the crown jewel of Vermont. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. That's the great thing, is that when you step up in leadership, you have a life of purpose, and it's actually kind of fun. Really, the way that you bring that spirit to everything. Our next award is to Des Hertz. When VCRD did outreach in Burke for our community visit process there, we asked everyone, who's the non-partisan statesperson that can help bring everyone together in this town? Who's super organized, energetic, nonpartisan? Who can represent the whole community, provide leadership to bring them together, and to follow through in the wake of this community engagement? And everyone pointed to Des as a sterling person who could unite the community. She's a resident of Burke Hollow, that little hamlet between East and West Burke, where she lives with her family, dogs, cats, chickens. She and her husband have 2 daughters, and she's the chair of the One Burke Board, which has been the leading organization since the visit. She organized and helped with the team of folks there. She's been teaching for over 20 years and is currently an instructional coach in the Kingdom East School District. She's also an avid outdoors woman in the community. Under her leadership, Burke residents dedicated themselves to advancing the infrastructure for the whole of the town. For East Burke, that meant, which is a bustling center for skiers and outdoor recreation folks congregating. And for West Burke, a quiet hamlet at the gateway to Lake Willoughby in the northern NEK. Priorities were for streetscape improvements, road, parking, safety in East Burke, and sewer infrastructure to underpin opportunities for housing and commerce in West Burke. And huge progress has been made. Julie?
Thanks, Paul. Like all good leaders, Des credits the success of One Burke to hard work, dedication, and collaboration from everyone who's been involved. And she's really right in saying that it truly does take a village to make the very sort of headway Burke has made towards its community goals. But it also takes leadership to catalyze a common direction and galvanize collective action in a community. And no one does that better than Des. We are happy to recognize your leadership, Des, with this 2020 Vermont Community Leadership Award. Congratulations.
Here you are, Des. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Paul and Julie and Jenna and everyone who I've gotten to know through VCRD. To echo what Mike said, it really was your work during our community visit that was the catalyst for continuing work in our small community. I've lived here most of my life, and through the work that I've done as a leader in Burke recently, in the past 4 years since your community visit, I've gotten to know my community and the members in my community in so much more depth, and have learned and am so proud of the hard work, dedication, intuitiveness, eagerness of all the community members who have done the work to make Burke a more vibrant and wonderful place. Mike, go NEK, things are happening here. And I'm so glad to see everything that's happening in Island Pond as well. It's wonderful. I think just quickly, before I sign off, one of the things that I'm so happy to see as part of the work that VCRD is doing and continuing to do with your guide and your network is to form more of a network and collaboration between folks within communities and within our state. We're partnering more and more in Burke with the Chamber and the Select Board as we move forward, and it has just created such energy in our community. It's so important throughout our state. So thank you, Paul and Jenna and everyone, John at VCRD, for the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Des. Des and Mike, you're both an inspiration to us, and we deeply appreciate you. You'll make our work meaningful, so thank you. We want to turn now and...
Could I interrupt just a moment, Paul? Listen to what you said and what Julie said about Mike and Des. I'm a lifelong Vermonter. I'm proud of being a Vermonter. I listen to to Mike and to Des and Julie and you. And I'm just bursting with pride. I'm sitting here in an old farmhouse in Middlesex, and I'm thinking, thank goodness for our state we have people like this and all of you. So sorry to interrupt, but if we were at a big public thing, I'd be standing and applauding.
Thank you so much, Senator. I think we're all standing inside and applauding in the virtual reality we live in. So thanks for saying that. And now at this point in the discussion, we're done the formal part of our presentations and our discussion, and we'd love to hear questions, especially from the press, about the work moving forward. And we're wondering if there's anyone who is ready with a question. And you could raise your hand in the participants area if that works for you. I see Representative Ricky Rissati.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great, thank you. I was curious if there are any other leaders present that have on their agendas to decolonize by reclaiming more of the indigenous terms of the landmarks and municipalities. And two more parts to that question of decolonizing is also decentralizing by supporting municipalities having a public referendum to petition for their own currency regulation. And the third part of that question is more about direct democracy and expanding who qualifies to be the public electorate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ricky. That's a pretty specific question. So I would ask if people have responses to Ricky to please make a mark in the chat so that she can connect with you. Thanks so much. Members of the press with questions about the direction that we may be heading here with this work. Anyone want to raise their hand in the participant list? Andrew McKeever, are you raising your hand? You'll have to unmute. Andrew?
I guess I was just curious, what prompted the Council on Rural Development to focus on developing a leadership initiative at this point? Is it your sense that there are fewer homegrown leaders coming forward from local communities than perhaps was the case some point in the past, or is it just a greater need for that homegrown leadership to help us surmount, some of the issues we've been concerned with recently, like
COVID crisis.
I've lost you guys here.
I can see you, Andrew, and I've heard the question. I think, for us, this is a culmination of 20 years of work with communities. The guide is a compendium of the work of hundreds of community visitors, people from Senator Leahy's office, but also from the Agency of Commerce or Agency of Education or USDA, partners who've come to town after town and they've lent their advice on different kinds of projects. We've added that advice up, we've modernized it, and we've put it together into the guide. When we go to communities, the fundamental reality is no one can come from Washington, D.C. and save Burke or lead Island Pond forward. The federal resources, state resources follow from the power of community members who step up for the common good. And it's gotta weave together. So it's not that we have fewer leaders today, it's that we need to, I think, we have an opportunity to renew democracy in Vermont. And in fact, that's a perpetual process that we're always engaged in. We see this as an extension and a uniting of a lot of our work. And I want to hand it to John Copans, who's really help to stitch these pieces together and take it to the next level. For our board, it's the compendium of a conversation that's been going on for more than 10 years about how do we better support the people who step up town to town around the state, so that we encourage, support, connect them so that they're successful for the future.
Yeah, and I would just echo what Paul said. I don't think we see any sort of reduction in local leadership. If anything, we see more people stepping forward. And what we see is the power of bringing those people together, that the learning they can do from one another. For VCRD, often our role is really the connector that brings people together. And that's what we see this network as doing, is bringing leaders from around the state together, connecting them with resources, but also really connecting them from one another, because there's so much learning and mutual support that can happen from those connections. You know, when I think about sort of the list of statewide challenges we face, whether it's topics like cleaning up Lake Champlain, addressing substance abuse disorder in our communities, thinking about climate, economic revitalization, all of those statewide challenges, we're not going to fix them without strong local leaders doing great work in their communities. And so to me, it's about sort of building a network to really empower and support those local leaders, because in supporting those local leaders, what we're doing is we're supporting the state as a whole, and we can strengthen our ability to define our future direction and then to move towards that direction together by really bringing local leaders together in this way.
Any other questions from the press? I'm not seeing anything in the participant hand raising. So I'll turn it back to John. It feels like we've had a great conversation, and deeply appreciate everyone being on the line for the call and for all the leadership that you bring to your community every day. John?
Hey, thanks so much, Paul. You know, we said it at the beginning, but if you all here in Zoom, if you take a moment and scroll through all of the screens of Vermonters from all corners of the state, the strength, the health of our state is really about the work that you all are doing in your communities. And for us at VCRD, I think we all feel just so privileged and fortunate that our day-in-day work is to get to partner with you, to support you, to bring you together, and to learn from you. We are constantly learning as an organization from all of the great work that you all do in your communities. And we're really excited about sort of taking this next step as an organization and working with you to take this next step of launching this network. So you can tell we're building this thing as we go. And frankly, the strength of the network is going to be about your participation and your feedback and recommendations. You know, part of that sign-up form that we link to has some questions about where people really would see value. What are some workshop topics you're interested in? Really would encourage you all to give us that feedback and to engage and to spread the word. The more you can help us spread the word, the stronger this work is going to be. So with that, I really want to thank everyone. I really want to thank our senior senator, Senator Leahy, and all of the leaders, Noel, Lisa, Charlie, Des, and Mike. It's your stories, it's your advice that is really what's powerful and emblematic of what we think is powerful about this network and bringing it together. So with that, thank you everybody, and have a great Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you, and we can see each other in person. Take care.
Thank you.
Take care.